objective measure being employed here, and it's just, we're trying to not upset people or not make anybody mad, when I think the consideration should ultimately be what is the benefit for the taxpayers and what is the benefit to the public. That's very disconcerting to me, not just for my office, but as a taxpayer and a citizen. I would really like to think that the decisions that are made here are based on what is best for the people outside of this building, as well as the people inside of it. And I think we have some offices that don't have enough staff right now. So, and I'm not talking about mine, but there are other offices that do not have enough staff and can't fill their positions. And we don't ever talk about, well, maybe we should try to increase here. We're just trying to maintain the status quo because that's the status quo and we don't want to upset people. So I don't have the solutions, but I would like to hear that there is at least some objective metric or process that is being employed to try to make this determination. Aside from the fact that I really think it is a 5-alarm fire at this point that we don't have a budget. So there was a question in there somewhere, which is, I guess, what is the plan for dealing with this? Because so far this morning, I've heard no one really wanting to talk about what the options are, cut this or cut that. I mean, there has to be cut this or cut that. What are the options of things to cut?
I think, Tyler, as far as your budgets and stuff, we just always ask all our county officers to be conservative in their spending.
And I think some of us are more than others. That's my
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
If you ask me my opinion, I'm going to give you my opinion on my office, and my opinion might be different than someone else's opinion about their own office. And I don't think that's a fair measure to just ask my opinion. That's not a fair measure. I think you should look at the workload in the office and the responsibilities in the office and the work product that comes out of the office.
Well, I think you're totally correct on that. And, once again, we're trying to initiate things to answer some of those questions, okay? At the present time, yeah, we made cuts kind of around the building, and you're right. You didn't argue, and some did. But we left them, or I thought we left them all in there. And that's the budget that I voted to approve a while ago, okay? And you're right, there's no excuse for us not having a budget at this point. We're having Angela do a work study as HR in each office, which that should have already have happened, should have already had that information to see if your office is overworked, underworked, or whatever. We've got some office holders that don't want her in there doing that. So that's a problem.
I do think that's a problem because I don't understand how you wouldn't want an objective measurement of what the
Exactly.
workload is.
It might tell us that I need more help, So, yeah.
And don't misunderstand, I'm not saying you shouldn't make a cut in my office. That's not my point. My point is, I want there to be a fair and objective process that makes some sense and is based on what is best for the public and not what is gonna keep the heat off, because that is what bothers me about a lot of these, what goes on.
100%.
Yeah, there's no doubt, there's offices here that doesn't have enough help. I mean, her first visit was down to 911, the dispatchers, and she came back.
And I'll tell you,
Totally
that's the
amazed.
-- 1 place that we need more employees is in the sheriff's
Totally
office.
amazed.
There's no question about
And
that.
brought it to our attention. I mean, overworked and underpaid, whatever, however you want to phrase it. But we've got to do this. It takes time, and we're, again.
And I understand that. My concern is just from the discussion this morning, I am not hearing a plan. I am hearing a, we'll talk about it later.
Well-
We don't, and that's not a solution. I mean, everybody that is a stakeholder is almost in this room. So why can't we talk about it right now?
Well,
What is the issue?
I think there is a plan, or at least I thought I had a plan. Again, like I said earlier, show me where you're gonna come up with more money without cuts.
I wouldn't try to show you that, because I know that can't be done.
Okay.
That's not what I'm advocating.
Thank you very
I'm
much.
advocating that you
Then the
balance
budget-
a budget.
Then the budget should have been passed.
Right, and there's a whole nother issue with, I mean, I won't even get into all this, but you've got a budget with no reserve money. I mean, that's concerning as well. I mean,
Well, I
No
think-
contributions to it.
no additional contributions, and I don't think the reserves are probably where they need to be from an
Absolutely
accounting
not.
standpoint.
Absolutely
Right.
not.
It's really
But-
hard to overstate how
Absolutely
much
not.
of a Band-Aid this would be even if it passed.
Yeah.
I don't know if
So-
everybody understands.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting you guys to pull a rabbit out of the hat, it is what it is, but I just want to make sure this is a thoughtful process, that everybody is looking at the realities
I
about
personally
what is,
am trying not to take money out of, we're already taking money out of reserves because we have no budget. That's causing us, because of payroll. That's not right. You know, I mean, I don't wanna take a dime out of reserve, because you're right, I mean, we need to be putting money in there, and it was a struggle to get it in there, and now everybody thinks we ought to spend it because we got money laying around. Well, like I said, next November, come talk to me. It'll be a big problem.
To Tyler's point, I think that to me, it kind of confirms the decision that we've made to enter into an employment agreement with Angela Knupp. The fact that this board had no idea what the appropriate staffing levels were for different offices is appalling to me as a citizen, and I had no idea that it was as bad as it was before I joined the board. And I know that it wasn't necessarily something that was created by the five of us, but it is our job to fix. And so having somebody as experienced as she is and as good at her job as she is to help us make those decisions for future years is valuable to me. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm glad she's here.
Counselor, just like Max said, the study in the offices, for job descriptions and personnel for the studies, yeah, I would like to have that done a long time ago. We've kind of got behind the eight ball here with not passing a budget with the information that she could provide, but like I say, here we are 2.5 months into it, and that needs to be done. I would like to think and answer your question, we did look around, and there's some positions that weren't filled that we thought that we could work with not filling them, and then there were some positions that we thought, you know, yeah, based upon what we see, not by what we've accumulated, because that's where this time study will be valuable to us. But the decisions we made, I think, were, I won't say they were as informed as we could be without a study. Of course, when you talk to a lot of the office holders, they're all overworked and understaffed. But we all can't be that way, especially coming into a budget. We have to look at that. So can we look into it deeper? Absolutely, and I want to do that. But the cuts that we did make, it was based on information as much as we could compile at the time.
what are the cuts in the budget that wasn't approved today? What are the cuts in the budget?
Yours, by not replacing,
Mm-hmm.
in the treasurer's office, one person was replaced by part-time, correct? In the circuit clerk's office, we looked at when there was a person retiring that we would not fill that position. Help me out, but there was one in addition to the clerk's office. Clerk's office, yeah, I got Tyler's. Clerk's office, going from 3 employees to 2.
You have state's attorney, circuit clerk, county clerk, treasurer.
And those are there aren't any other significant cuts anywhere in the budget, and like,
Personnel?
well, anything, any personnel or non-personnel?
No.
I'm not saying there should be, I'm just
No,
asking.
in answer to your question, no, That was the cuts, of course,
I mean, there's small cuts, like maybe office supplies from
Right.
3,000 to 2,500 or something
Yeah.
like that.
and that's the first thing we did, Tyler, is we went in there and of course those were, to be honest, those kind of cuts, we'd already weeded back to the bare
Right,
bones
last
of
year.
that.
Yeah, you
So I
dealt
mean,
with that last year.
and even if you do cut that, that's not the monies that we were looking for. So as far as personnel, that's.
I wasn't saying it was, I was just asking if
No,
there's
no,
some-
it's-
something else. I mean, you didn't make any contributions to the reserves, so that's
No.
also a cut from last year's budget,
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely.
Yes.
And so, is there anything else?
No, as far as personnel, that was the personnel that we were
Mhm.
looking at. And then, like I say, the reserves was, that was a amount of money that we put into this year's budget that, personally, I mean, that hurt. That was,
Is there 0 to reserves in this budget?
Correct.
Right.
The only transfer to any kind of reserve is to our compensated absences reserved, and it's for people that we expect to retire or leave this year to cover what we're actually gonna have to pay. So nothing to build the reserve, just to cover expenses. Every other reserve has nothing in it. I mean, nothing going in it.
and this will come up, I'm sure, when we're talking this afternoon about the budgets, but I mean, you know, this was a hard process to get at, because like I say, 4 months ago, we were looking at a $450,000, is that about right? Rounding off, $450,000 deficit coming into this year. So by looking at what we did and not filling some positions, and like I say, there is a layoff, but the rest is just not filling positions vacant. For us to get to that point, I know, and Max said it's hard decisions, but I'll have to say, for us to get to that point, even though there's a lot of condemnation going on as condemning us, I think that I want for this board, I would commend this board and Angie to get where they're at now from where they were 4 months ago with the amount of hardship that we've going to cause or has caused. I just think that, and as Max said, there's some hard decisions to be made. And then whatever decision we make now, then for the next board to come, as Alex said, it's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid because it's not going to get any better. And if we do, and I know that it's been said by a person in the public at a meeting, you know, that we need to take some money out of reserves. I think that his term was a slush fund. And well, it's not a slush fund, it's a reserve that we need to next year to even meet payroll going into the first fiscal year of next year, and those monies need to be in there. And if we start sucking all that money out, then, you know, I'm looking at this board to make a decision on what's going to happen 3 to 5 years, 10 years down the road. And if we don't make those decisions now, then next year and the year after that, instead of not filling the positions that we have now, we're going to look at layoffs across the board, and that's what we're trying to get around is to. But I know it's hard decisions, and we can't make everybody happy.
Are there any other alternative changes in the budget that you looked at besides these personnel cuts? I mean, is there another option that is a worse option, but that was considered as an option?
I really don't know what you. I definitely know, because I don't know.
That's my question, is did you discuss any other options of something that you could cut or change that?
I don't think we could see anything else that we could cut.
Yeah, and
Well,
that
that's
would
what
be
I'm
the-
asking.
Yeah, that would be the answer that I would give.
Yeah, we
I don't,
searched line by line by line by line,
again and again.
and again and again, and there's no place else to go.
I mean,
I mean, it's, you know,
reserves and contingencies, and
that's the only other place we got to go for money or lack of, or
Mhm.
whatever. And it's just not there.
if I,
Well, I guess my question is, what do you have to discuss this afternoon? I would like to know, because I don't know that we're all going to be here this afternoon, because we all have things we have to do in our offices.
I don't know what we're.
What are you going to discuss?
I don't
Well,
know.
as far as I'm concerned, the budget that was put forth by me, by one commissioner, Commissioner Hartline, this is what I see for the next budget. But with that being said, just as you ask, is there any other alternatives? I'm open for that. So in answer to your question, Tyler, what are we going to discuss? I am open because I'm going to be listening, because this budget that we put forth is what I see. That's what I see. But that's not to say, because I'm not an accountant, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. So I will listen to what anybody has for alternatives. I am open, wide open for it. So in answer to your question, I'm looking forward to it too.
And we did figure in the budget also, again, trying to do what we could as far as the contract talks coming up and so forth, or that are in progress, amount for raises that we knew we had to. But again,
Yeah, that was taken into consideration.
you know, so that's thrown in there on top of the deficit we had.
My questions are not even really about the substance. I mean, I do think on the substance, I think when there are layoffs, there needs to be an objective measure, and it shouldn't just be who is the most upset about it, because that's not a way to determine who gets laid off and who doesn't.
I agree, I mean, and that was never,
I'll have to say it wasn't for me.
Okay,
was
well,
not for me.
it shouldn't be. There should be an objective measure of what is a benefit to the public and what is the workload in the
Now
office.
with that,
But-
I will say there was some compassion in it, but it was not the objective.
But my concern is really just about the process and what is the plan? Because this needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved in a way that everyone out here feels like there has been a thoughtful decision made. So if you're telling me, these are the layoffs that we think we need to make, and you're telling me, I don't know what other alternative there could be to otherwise balance this budget, what do you have to discuss? I would like to know, because I would like to know what you are doing.
well,
Because we are 2.5 months into the fiscal year.
I thought, and I'm stating this out here for the public, before we took this vote, I thought we were in agreement, this is what we were doing. So, and I don't, that's why Danny said what he said, that's why I said what I said. Well, what are you gonna do? Show me, tell me. It hasn't been shown or told before, up until today.
But in answer to your question, and we'll get, but in answer to your question, yes. I, for one, I can tell you, Tyler, that yes, that these cuts were, for lack of a better word, strategic. There was some thought put into it. There was a plan, and I'm like you, I'm open.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
have you discussed in the past on budget and in the future, have you discussed as a board the fact that you've made 3 new positions since 2013 at $60,000 apiece? Is that part of the discussion?
I will address it. I will say that in the 3 positions you're talking about are
These 2 and the IT.
okay, well, the IT we're looking at. The IT we're looking at, okay? As far as the others, I think that, and again, I'll take them separately. The county administrator, like I said, was hired going on 5 years now. It's been 4 years. I think it is a very vital part of the operations of the county. I for one, say that is needed, and we've talked about this in meeting after meeting after meeting, and that is a vital part as far as this board, as far as I'm concerned. That's that's not up for discussion. The Human Resource Director, I think, was a very, very strategic hire. I think it was a smart hire. I think it was a very needed hire. And like I say, and that has been talked about in meetings, and I, for one, would just like to put that to bed, because this board, excluding Alex, this board was in favor when we hired the Human Resource Director, because there was a need there by audits, by the need of the county, and just like going forward for all the things that a Human Resource Director can do for a time study, giving us information that we need to make logical decisions. That, again, as far as I'm concerned, those are off the table, and we've talked about those, and we've entertained meeting after meeting after meeting, and it's time for me, for one, to put that to bed, because it's off the table. Now, that's my opinion. I think the two hires were very crucial, beneficial. I think they proved themselves to be beneficial to the taxpayers of the county, as Counselor had said, for the 17,000 people of the county. It's crucial to make wise decisions and put wise, competent people in those positions so they can advise the board on how to make logical decisions. So, in answer to your question, I guess for me, no, those two are needed positions by the county. That's my opinion.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, but the reason the vote was split on the employment agreement was not because of the need for the job, it was because of the structure of the way the job was set up.
Exactly.
We all acknowledge the need for the job.
Yes.
So, we have a public
So,
comment.
so we are in favor of the five of us saying those two positions are needed.
Yes, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I think they're being conducted very well at the time. I think that they're making back their money and more with the jobs they do.
I agree.
The public comment period, I think in the ordinances is limited to 5 minutes for each person. And so I don't want to say in as many terms as you said, Danny, that we need to put it to bed. I think that you have the freedom to come and address the board in any way that you want to. But after 5 minutes is up, I'm not going to entertain conversations about this anymore. Me personally, I'm going to sit here in quiet, and if we want to talk about it.
Well, my question didn't last 5 minutes.
No, I'm not, and I'm not saying that you spoke for more than 5 minutes. What I'm saying is that in the future, I'm not going to respond to those kinds of questions and waste board time.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's about the substance of the positions or what they're being paid according to their contracts, that is settled, in my opinion.
Well, my question was, what is on the table and what isn't? And Danny answered it, that those are not on the table, but the IT is, so that was my question.
Yeah,
And that's correct.
of the three, I think that the IT was the one we had the most questions about the validity of paying a full-time salary for IT work. But there is no question in my mind that what we're paying Angela and Angie is not only fair, but needed for the county.
But you do agree that office holders certainly have the right and the privilege to question what you're gonna put in as an IT person, that's not.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. No,
Okay.
all the comments.
But not the taxpayer?
It wasn't that's not what I said. What I said
I guess
was
I don't
the
understand.
employment of the two people that we've constantly questioned in these meetings, to me, is settled. And their pay is settled. And if we need to renegotiate, or if we need to revisit this at a later time, there will be a change on the board in December, and we can revisit it then. But I don't think that there's any inclination from the five of us to want to revisit that in any near future, unless there's a reason for us to fire them according to their agreements. And I'm not saying that because I don't want to hear from people anymore. I'm saying it because this has become such a waste of time in this meeting to revisit this over and over and over again. We've not empowered Angela enough to do her job, and now we're sitting here asking what the staffing requirements should be for the county, because we've not empowered her to do her job. That's not okay.
I had one. On the other end of the budget spectrum, is there a loss in revenue? Is that where the deficit comes in at? And I'm sure there's more expense, I know that always goes up, but why is there a loss of revenue? Is there an explanation on that? Is my question with that, just as a general.
And you can get the breakdown, I don't know, the state took
10%?
10%, which amounted to, was it 120,000 or so?
Yes, about that.
And then the highway department,
10% of what?
Sales tax.
sales tax.
The general sales tax?
Yeah. And then the highway department lost around 80,000,
78.
78,000 out of Edie County money.
I just
That's,
curious.
that's just part of it.
Oh, I understand that, that's what I'm asking, that's why I'm trying to make more sense of why we're in the situation we are. We, you just hear cuts and cuts, and I understand, but you gotta, there's another side of the budget as well, and that's what I was curious where the expense was lost there, what magnitude that was.
We're not having an influx of people moving into
And I
Union
understand
County.
that,
We're not having an influx of people spending money here. It's all going the
That-
other direction.
that leads to my next, what are we gonna do, because the revenue's where we're going to sustain that. And so that's, is the board looking at a 5-10 year plan, something along that line? I know that's easy to say, but it's hard to do. And I know you guys are taxed with a lot of things, but that'd be something that I would like to see done.
Yeah, I would love to see money put into economic development, for that's, and I'll go on record right here, right now, that at the beginning, months ago, on this budget discussion, I was the first one, and I wanted to talk about revenues, nothing with cuts, nothing on the budget other than revenues. I wanted to have a discussion just on revenues. And it didn't go anywhere. And that's not laying the blame on anything, because like you said, that's a lot easier thing to say than to do. I would love to have the money to put into our economic development, to do studies, to do, as far as advertisements, as far as reaching out to businesses to get them to come to Union County to, for anything as far as revenues. We have to have it, because like you said, our revenues are going to go down, our expenditures are going to go up just naturally, let alone that the state, that we started out this budget process with a $200,000 deficit of what we used to get from the state. So, I would love to do that, but
I was just curious on, because when you're talking cuts and with other things, that you have to have, reason why, and I think that's a big reason why when you look into your budget of that issue. The state's hard enough as a city or a county to have, to do any type of economic development in this state, because it's just not a business-friendly state. So you've got an uphill battle regardless of where you're at as a city or a county or wherever bordered. So I understand that. So that's what I was just wanted to make sure.
I hope we answered your question
Yeah,
somewhat.
absolutely.
And that's what we're up to. And like you said, whatever we do now, without increasing our revenues, we're putting a Band-Aid on it. And it's plus we're a PTEL county, so we can't raise taxes. So with our revenues going down, we're under a PTEL, with our expenses going up. I'm telling you, it's a bleak observation, and it's a slow death to the county.
It's worth noting too that PTEL is not a restriction to rein in people from raising taxes at will. It's more of an issue of we could not capture taxes that were newly generated even if we wanted to in some circumstances. So even if we could improve people wanting to move here, we're still handicapped until the voters would vote out something like PTEL, which is up for discussion as far as I'm concerned. I think that we should have more informational sessions about it because it's a complicated subject, but it's a rock and a hard place.
And by the way, we put 0 in the budget for economic development. That's the first, also, and that's a problem. But,
Have you received your audits? The audits that,
not yet.
you still haven't received them?
And we're still in the legal process of pursuing that.
And the termination letter has been sent.
Yeah,
Yes.
we've terminated the service.
We terminated the contract, yeah. But we, no, to your question.
We have the county's audit for fiscal year 16 is the last one we have. The one that's for 17, it's not quite due yet for the county, but we don't have an auditor to do it, so we're putting out an RFP for that. The circuit clerk's audits, though, we're missing 15, 16 that are past due, and then 17 that will be due shortly. It'll be on the same RFP. So, and I sent that to Tyler yesterday, and he reviewed it really quickly, and so I have that sent to the board to.
And Todd,
get
that's
out.
where we're between a rock and a hard place there, because no, we do not have the audits, but at the same time, we're terminating the contract for the person that was doing it. So now, we're back at square one to try to get our audits. You know, it's a bad situation, and I think it was the right thing to do at this juncture is to terminate that contract. But by doing that, now here we are, you know, and like I say, I know that Tiffany and then through the judicial, you know, they've done all that they can by sending out the request. We've done what we can, and I think we're headed in the right direction to sever ties and then to begin the process. But the sad part about it is we're way behind by no fault of ours. But yes, Judge.
And I apologize, I got here late. If you have paid for her services, should you not be able to get the product she was supposed to have done for those 2 years? Or am I not understanding
No,
correctly?
no, and what we've paid and what we've gotten for that payment, I don't know where we're at in all that, because we are so divided out on 15, 16, 2 different audits, I would have to defer that over to.
We actually haven't paid for everything that
Okay.
she has done, so we're actually to the good on that,
Okay.
on the finance. on
That was
issue.
my question. If you paid for it, you should be entitled to get it.
Yeah, we haven't. paid.
No,
Okay.
and that's something that we looked into, because that was my concern about cutting the tie, is where we at and what we gonna get, and then what kind of quality is it gonna be.
We may have, I'd have to check, we may have paid for the circuit clerk's 15 audit, but we are still withholding the county's money that where she did, which is far exceeds what we've paid her, until we can get it all resolved, so.
Yeah, we held this to get this, so.
You've already made your decisions, basically, where you want to cut personnel before the time study?
Like I said, we had to make decisions based on fiscal, by money. Okay, we made our cuts by money. Then, yes, and answer your question, yes, it's way behind, but like Alex said, is our human resource director was not empowered to go in and do the time studies. Now, what I'm hoping, and where we're gonna come up with the money, we'll look, but, you know, yes, we're making these cuts based on money. Then, when we do the time study, then we come back and when the human resource director says, this is what I think needs to be in each office, then we'll have documentation in hand that we can either decrease or increase at that time, based on the time study. But right now, we're making our decisions based upon fiscal decisions, and then after we get our time study, then we might allocate or we might decrease whatever the time study comes. Hopefully, I don't know where that'll land, and I don't know if that answered your question, but yes, that's what we did. We based it based upon money and then the need in the office that we saw, and we were making the best decision that we could by the information that we had, by the reductions in the office based upon our money, and then we'll look at. But like I say, back to combine your question with the counselors, is we made them based upon what we thought fiscally and what we thought the office could sustain with personnel while the time study's going on, so we can make the logical decision based upon the time study. Any of you guys got anything different than that?
No, I totally agree with that, and I mean, there's never been a time study done here before, so that's a first. I mean, again, yeah, maybe we got the cart before the horse, but it's a gradual process of getting people in place, the proper jobs, proper talent to get stuff done, and that's taken a while. So, yeah, I wish the time study had been done already, but it hasn't. And like I said, we're getting pushback from some people on even doing it. So, there you go.
I would like to say though, in response to Max's comment, because he said it twice about the objections, as an office holder, and I can't speak for the other ones here, but this is the first I've ever heard of it. So I don't know who you're being pushed back from, but I just want to make that clear for the record. This is the first that's ever been mentioned to me as an office holder. So like I said, I can't speak for the rest, but I do want to make that clear.
And I appreciate
I
that.
wasn't recommending you, so.
Oh, I know, but I was just saying, you were saying multiple, so I mean, it's the first I've heard of it. So I just want to make that clear for the public and taxpayers.
Yeah, and I would say as a commissioner, I think it's a very wise thing for us to do, to go in, case in point, just like Matt said, when our human resource director went down, she came back and said the dispatchers, they're busy, they are possibly, understaffed. And I appreciate that, because you know what it did for me as a commissioner is my perspective, and not to say that I thought you were overstaffed, Scott, and that's not what I mean, but when you have somebody that goes down that's a professional at what she does and looks at this and comes back and says, this is what I find, I value that information.
Well, it's important as an independent person to come down there and look at it, because this is not me telling you, not that you wouldn't believe me, but you got somebody else verifying that we're busy.
Absolutely, and
Well, it's to the point, I went down and spent some time down there, which I should have already done. And in our meeting with them also, it was eye-opening, very much so.
and it might be in every office, one way or the other. But at least we're basing that upon, in answer to your question, ma'am, we made our decisions by what we saw, and that's not real fair, because we're having a bird's eye view, but we made it based upon fiscal. And then, once we get through this and have a balanced budget, then we'll take a look at it, and these positions that are not replaced or decreased or whatever, the human resource director might come back and say, that wasn't good. Then we'll take a look at it. But right now, we have to do something, or we're